Can you say some more about that, Andrew? Because I think there could be merely a reduction. That's what a lot of people fear in what they're used to. And people are trying to hang on desperately to what they at least have in the face of things like the recession and other scares. And this kind of nightmare scenario can make people shrink back even more to hang on and protect what they have. I mean, how do you get beyond that to people to go through that anguish and then come out actually open to new possibilities?
I think the first thing we should be really clear about is that the system that we have at the moment doesn't work for a number of reasons. We've seen the fallout from, in economic terms, from thinking that we can live beyond our means in the banking crisis, which has destroyed livelihoods, destroyed jobs. We're seeing in climate change the fallout from thinking that we can live environmentally beyond our means. But I think there's something bigger and more profound that's wrong with the system that we have. That we've been sold the lie that merely getting more stuff, owning more things, defining ourselves as consumers, believing that, you know, if you have a television the size of a swimming pool, it's going to make you happy. Having 3 cars parked outside is going to make you happy. We know from well-established methods for assessing life satisfaction and well-being that in typical advanced industrialized countries like the United Kingdom, the same holds true for many European countries and North America, the point at which having more stuff made your life better, gave you more life satisfaction, was past decades ago. So for the last few decades, addicted to the notion of economic growth and ever rising levels of consumption, well, this has been going up and up and up like this, while our life satisfaction has either flatlined or in some senses gone down, because the lives we've had to live for this acquisitive consumer culture have destroyed things that really do matter to us and really do give us quality of life, like time to spend with friends and family, time to do the things that you know, if you want to learn something new, learn a language, learn an instrument, time to be a member of your community and take part in group activities, time to go for a walk in the woods. We've become perhaps cash and thing rich, but time and quality of life poor. What that means, and what our research at the New Economics Foundation is telling us, is that if you look across Europe, you have levels of consumption ranging from so-called quite frugal one planet living, very hard to do in a rich country, right up to sort of fly around the world 5 times a year, 8 planet living. But then if you ask those same people with this range of lifestyles about their levels of life satisfaction, you are just as likely to have as high a level of life satisfaction down at 1 planet living as at 8 planet living. That tells us one huge important lesson, that we can, in rich countries, radically reduce our levels of consumption and still have as good lives, if not better, if we then start spending our time in ways which the research also tells us gives you real sense of life satisfaction.
There is a question I'd like to follow up on that, but there are some questions that are coming in. I'd like to introduce you to Jeff here, who's been monitoring the tweets and the chats that are coming in. So obviously you've stirred up some questions here. So let's go to that first, and I'll save up my question for later.
This one comes actually right on the tail of a lot of what you were talking about. It's very simple. Are we willing to change our lifestyles? And I think it's a good question. It sounds like your research very clearly shows that if we were to change our lifestyles, there wouldn't be any sort of loss of happiness. There might even be a gain of happiness. But is that message getting through? Are people really willing to do it?
I think, interestingly, people are already voting with their feet, and sometimes the motivation has perhaps not been climate change, but what's been interesting in the face of the global recession of the last couple of years is that a lot of people who have either chosen or not had the choice but have had to go on to shorter working weeks, for example, are finding out that they may be earning less, but actually they've got more time on their hands to do the things which they really do enjoy doing, and now don't want to go back to how things were before. There was one example of a piece of research coming out of Utah in the United States where the municipality put people onto a shorter working week, and what they found is that levels of morale in the workplace have gone up, people are happier, absentee rates have gone down. So overall, making that kind of shift, there seems to be being lived out at the moment a lot of really good examples of how we could move to lives of perhaps a slightly slower pace, lower levels of consumption in rich countries, and higher levels of well-being.
But Andrew, let's be frank. You run around like an idiot. So do I. And I've been trying for years to slow you down long enough to come and talk to the team, and we've never managed it because either you've been too busy or we've been too busy. So it seems to me that neither you nor I, as far as I know, are mad on consumer durables or consumer anything else. So it's not that. It's not stuff. There's something else that we're also addicted to, isn't there? And that is achievement. And I was struck when you said, when we stop, running around earning more and more money, we could learn an instrument, we could learn this, this is
just put your feet up. I mean, there are for example, there is a writer called Tom Hodgkinson who edits a magazine called The Idler, and he is a great fan of saying that the best thing you could do to tackle climate change right now is nothing at all. And what he means by that is not just kind of don't do anything about climate change, just don't do anything at all. Stay at home, put your feet up, watch the clouds roll by, listen to the birds singing. Now that's one extreme form. You and I might choose that. It's often said, there's an old cliche of the environmental movement that we end up, all the activists and the campaigners end up doing to themselves what they're trying to stop everybody else doing to the planet. Now, I think the point about having to spend less time sort of chained to a desk in orthodox employment in the workplace is that we have the time and more freedom to do the things in which we find meaning, in which we are compelled to act. We feel vocationally driven, perhaps, but that then is our choice. And with that, strangely, and another interesting piece of research coming out from a psychologist called Professor Tim Kasser, and if for no other reason you take up arms to do something about climate change, in a fascinating and original study recently published by Tim Kasser, he's shown that people who think of themselves as activists, as campaigners, and who are engaged or planning to do something are, generally speaking, happier and have higher levels of fulfillment. So if for no other reason, be an activist, stop climate change, get happy.
Isn't it because we feel then empowered, because we don't feel helpless? Because it's that sense of powerlessness that is the most depressing thing. And isn't that when we first start to talk to people about climate change, that powerlessness is what comes over one, and that's a deeply uncomfortable sensation. And so then how do you get empowered? And presumably you can tell us some ways in which we can start to feel empowered.
Well, here's a huge irony. There are many, many reasons that we should criticize conventional economics. One of them is this notion that we're all isolated individuals making completely free choices on a rational basis. The study of behavioral economics tells us this is completely wrong, and that actually, even if we're not aware of it, you, I, and everybody else are far more influential than we like to think. That's because when we make choices about what we do, even if we're not aware of it, we are basing those choices on what we've seen other people doing. So actually, if you start doing things, even without knowing it, you will be influencing others. Nelson Mandela said this shortly after he was released from imprisonment. One of the reasons people don't do things on a very deep level is perhaps not because they fear that they are powerless, but perhaps they are afraid of what they might achieve. And actually facing up to what your true agency is as an individual and the responsibilities it gives you is the bump that you have to get over. But if for no other reason, if you want to have some influence in the world, all you have to do is act.
It's just